In our last two episodes, we learned how the heads of the asbestos industry met in 1934 to discuss the bad press that asbestos was getting as being unhealthy. Company doctors had warned these executives for years that their product was causing certain respiratory symptoms in the miners and other asbestos workers. Faced with potential employee lawsuits and legislative sessions discussing regulation of asbestos, the asbestos executives decided to hire a respected scientific researcher who would bolster their arguments in downplaying and even denying the health damage of asbestos. When that research showed that asbestos caused cancer, the corporate executives buried the study and in the final report deleted all mention of cancer or tumors. How exactly did the asbestos executives come to hire Saranac Laboratories? And how could such a highly respected health research facility, which had been among the leaders in a national campaign to defeat tuberculosis, how could they not reveal that over 80% of its animal subjects exposed to asbestos ended up developing cancerous tumors? Well, the answer to that question lies with a physician named Dr. Anthony Lanza. For half a century, the asbestos industry denied that their products were killing people. Discover how deep the lies went on Asbestos Exposed. Lanza had been appointed chief surgeon to the Bureau of Mines and assigned to study lung diseases among miners. He published a landmark report describing the lung diseases caused by inhaling dust, a category of diseases known as pneumoconiosis. After several years, Lanza went into the private sector to become the medical director of Metropolitan Life Insurance and the asbestos industry's downplayer-in-chief on the subject of asbestos health damage. As he worked in the private sector, Lanza was approached by Johns Manville, the largest asbestos company in the world. They wanted to fund a study that Lanza would conduct on the health effects of asbestos in silica. From one perspective, this seems like a responsible step. The company was seeking to find out whether its product, asbestos, was in fact dangerous to employees and consumers. By that point, numerous doctors and researchers in England and elsewhere were arguing strongly that asbestos did cause severe health problems. Asbestos company doctors had warned them about health problems with asbestos, so Dr. Lanza deleted the line from the next draft of his report. When the asbestos industry received the draft, outside law firm Hobart & Menard wrote to Vandiver Brown, the head lawyer for Johns Manville. "We have consistently urged that there is a substantial difference between silicosis and asbestosis. In fact, one of our principal defenses in lawsuits against the company has been that the scientific and medical knowledge have been insufficient until a very recent period to place upon the owners of plants or factories the burden or duty of taking special precautions against the possible onset of the disease to their employees." Some employees had already started to sue asbestos companies for asbestos injuries, but if research like Dr. Lanza's showed that asbestos was as bad as silicosis, then the asbestos industry could no longer play dumb and would have to start protecting workers and risk paying for their injuries. In fact, Dr. Lanza himself had worked as such a company doctor and already indicated to them that asbestosis was affecting many of their employees. But the asbestos industry had another agenda. As we talked about in some of our last episodes, the asbestos industry playbook has been followed by lots of other industries, like Big Tobacco, who even used the same PR firm as some asbestos companies. When medical research showed that their product caused health problems, including cancer, their plan for damage control was to muddy the waters by paying for and producing their own scientific research, which they could edit the wording of and use to support a claim that asbestosis was not that serious and that asbestos didn't cause cancer. They hoped for evidence that their product was healthy, but in the absence of that, asbestos and tobacco companies both hoped for studies that were inconclusive. Until science knew for sure, they argued, they shouldn't have to change their product or how it is made and sold. In the 1920s, the largest asbestos manufacturer in the world was Johns Manville. They owned large deposits of asbestos in Quebec, Canada, and their product was found in the majority of asbestos products around the world. And they couldn't afford bad news about asbestos. So Johns Manville sought to respond by paying for their own scientific research, and the man for the job was Dr. Anthony Lanza. In addition to asbestos, Lanza was also hired to study silicosis, another illness caused by breathing dust, in this case silica, a material contained in granite and other minerals. As chief surgeon for the Bureau of Mines, Lanza had led some of the pioneering research into silicosis. It was a well-known and accepted disease, and laws had been passed requiring companies to pay for silicosis illness through workers' compensation. But the asbestos industry did not want asbestosis to be covered as well. For a long time, they denied it was a real disease at all, and they figured they could fight off any potential lawsuits by claiming asbestos health concerns were overblown or speculative. At the very least, the asbestos industry was really hoping that asbestosis would be less of an issue, permitting them to blame silicosis as the real problem. Unfortunately for them, Dr. Lanza found that asbestosis was very real, and it was worse. At one point, Dr. Lanza had written that as a disease, asbestosis might be milder than silicosis. As the results of an extensive 3-year study came back, he revised that view, coming to believe that if anything, asbestosis was worse. An even bigger fear was legislation. New Jersey was considering adding asbestosis to the list of recognized employee health problems, and the asbestos industry legal team brought it up among their concerns about Saranac's final report. Lawyers dictating what the findings of a doctor's report should be on the basis of PR decisions. If Vandiver Brown or any of the company executives discussed the morality of not telling employees the truth about asbestos, they didn't put that in their minutes. But they did write to Anthony Lanza and express their concerns. And when the final report was published, with Lanza's name at the top, the statement, the one claiming the data showing that asbestosis was milder than silicosis, the one that Dr. Lanza had removed, was in the final report. But the asbestos conspiracy was just getting started. We'll unearth what else they were hiding on the next episode of Asbestos Exposed.